Great. So I think we're going to have a super exciting discussion and a great topic to start off a day like this. Shrikant has mentioned it, so did Ritika. Consumer behavior, especially with regard to news, has changed. People now consume news content on Instagram. Twitter is 2010. And YouTube, of course, is YouTube, right? And I was looking at a recent Google Kantar study, and I just want to read out some mind-boggling numbers from there, is that apparently Indian language consumers use as many as 5 different platforms to access news online. 5. And if you're a broadcaster, you're possibly not just competing with other news channels, but also every news influencer out there and explainer video, so many on social media. 93% of consumers use YouTube to access news online. 88% social media. 82 are consuming news from chat apps, just WhatsApp. And I think that's evident in how a lot of news channels got onto the whole WhatsApp channel bandwagon, as has afaqs. Please follow us on WhatsApp channels for all the latest news, insights on advertising, media, and marketing. It's always worth for a good plug, right? And the COVID pandemic definitely reshaped a lot of our consumption habits. Um, During the pandemic, I think viewership went up on news channels. You know, the share of time spent on news channels was up, but now market share is again back down to the single digits. And we are seeing that while consumption of news has increased, it's possibly not on that linear television. It's moved elsewhere, and therefore the need to measure it, to sell it differently, etc. So that kind of sets the stage for our discussion here. I want to start with you, Archana. Maybe you can tell us, I mean, given that there are so many avenues where news is being distributed, and therefore you can also reach your audiences on all of these platforms. How do you view um, the whole media landscape from a news broadcaster, news distribution point of view? Are you looking only at linear? When you're looking at the various digital channels, do you look at them separately? What happens?
See, as you rightly said, consumers consume any content very differently. I mean, in different ways and manners. You might want to look at just get a quick update in terms of just the headline, so you'll go to a particular platform. You want a detailed, in-depth understanding, you will maybe go to another platform. WhatsApp, there are a lot of links which get passed on, and then if it's of interest, you'll read it. So as an advertiser, we have to go where the consumer goes, because that's who we're trying to reach. So it's not like, oh, I will only take a particular platform. We do programmatic, we do television, because there is, people still watch news on TV. They also consume it on digital when they are on the go, or when they're in office, for example. We look at the news from multiple formats. So it could be through apps, it could be on YouTube, where the hard-coded news feeds are. Obviously TV, as I talked about, and we also do programmatic news. So it's like a mix. And then there are a lot of these short news platforms, like the In Shorts, and now there's a regional platform. We even look at those because some people just want to look at the latest, get the latest news, because the reason the consumers look at different platforms, they might have one maybe go-to platform, but that doesn't mean that's the only platform they will go to all the time, because there's only that many apps that they can download. So that's the reason in sometimes, maybe television or YouTube becomes, or OTT platforms which curate news platforms become a go-to place.
Got it. Rajiv, if I can come to you, given that there are all of these channels, as an advertiser, how badly do you need that unified view of the consumer and where they're spending time? Do you know if the person watching an ad on a live TV channel on via say YouTube is the same person you are reaching through TV, or is this a new user? And therefore, how differently you can reach this person?
So first of all, what is most important is that you reach out to consumers, because you're anybody who's watching a news, or say is able to say understand news and watch news, is my potential customer. So my job is just to reach out to my customer. That's the first objective. Whether the person is available online, offline, or any other way, that is not important. What is important is reach out to the customer. Then how do you reach out to that customer? Is it the cheapest possible way? Then you look at what is the cheaper way of reaching out to this customer. If it's like on TV is cheaper, then you reach out through TV, or if it's online is cheaper, you reach out to that. So one part of solution is that reaching out to that person. Now the second part is how to reach out to that person. So reaching out through television has been easier always, and television offered a huge, massive viewership till now. In recent times, what we've seen is that shift is happening between television to a digital medium in a big way. And rightly, all the news channels have joined the bandwagon, and they have kind of started their own channels, and they have a dual telecast happening on news online. So news which is available on television is also available on online, so as to say. This is the second way. Third way is like there was a period when used to get a pop-up of news through news apps like In Shorts, etc. That was also one way of reaching out. But somehow I've seen that that is had a very diminishing kind of a return, and that doesn't give you as much kind of viewership. So live TV still is very, very, very important. Live TV coming to you through television or through digital medium, that's something has to be seen and has to be measured. And if there's a unified measurement which can say that cost of reaching out to one consumer is so much through television versus this, and if there's a unified way of reaching out to their customers, like that'll matter a lot to advertiser like us.
And Aditi, I want to come to you now from a media buying standpoint. I want to understand uh, how important is it? I mean, I'm sure there are already ways to measure what a consumer is watching online. That has existed. YouTube can tell you. A lot of news channels, in fact, now flaunt their YouTube subscriber numbers, right? That's already happening. They have all recognized it. They talk about it to stakeholders like you. Um, but that subscriber number aside, which is visible to everybody, how important is it to have, or is it at all important to have an analog of the way you measure reach and frequency, etc., on linear TV, translate that to digital? Are you able to do that? Is that the big challenge right now?
So first, let me answer the first part of your question. Is it important? Absolutely. I mean, you heard two advertisers tell us that eventually in our attempt to reach consumers, we want to have everything on a parity scale. We want to be able to see what people are consuming on television, on different digital platforms, and bring it together. Today, the digital environment is fragmented, and like I think you mentioned it, that you have YouTube and you also have the news being shared on WhatsApp and on other platforms. There is really no single way of measuring. So there are two things that we try to do, I think, as a partner. The first is that you start off with understanding, how the consumption is a bit different across platforms, because the way the ads, for example, or how a brand is perceived is seen on linear TV is quite different from how it is consumed on digital platforms. Even, the various norms in terms of when do I say the ad has been seen, how much has been consumed, is actually measured differently. So what we first try to do is to bring in a concept called equivalence, to see what is the thing which can be compared. If as a brand or as an agency, we have to choose which platform to go with, that is one of the elements that we look at. The other thing that you also try to see is that the consumption of digital itself is very fragmented. So there is different kind of formats. Even on one single platform, let's say a YouTube, you would have multiple formats that you can go with, you know. And the way we normally work with clients is rather than looking at the same piece of content, you know, this, let's say I have a 20-second ad. Instead of placing exactly the same piece of content across, place it in a manner where the medium is being consumed in a certain way. So maybe the same story is being told but through multiple pieces of content so that you can leverage what is being seen in the best way. And finally, the consumer has a holistic picture of, you know, what is the communication that a brand is trying to convey. So these are the attempts, but that said, the industry today doesn't have any way, and not just for news, but for, I think, any kind of content consumption, there is no single metric available, which is definitely a challenge.
Geet, I want to bring you in now. I mean, you are the evangelist for cross-platform measurement and for everybody to have a unified view. What we are hearing from all panelists so far is that there is definitely a need for this unified view, and that this would really, you know, improve how money will be invested. So we don't have this yet, and is it because we don't have the capability to do it? You can answer.
I think the technology is always the easiest part. And I come from, you know, over 30 years in the technology space, even before I came into the media industry. But I think technology is always the easiest part. It's about getting the stakeholders aligned. It's about getting, figuring out what's the objective that we want to achieve with that technology. It's about the actual implementation. It's about sustaining that. Those are the real challenges, which essentially boils down to people. Do we need a unified view of the consumer across different channels of distribution? Of course we do. That's imperative for advertisers. They hold the dollars. Do we have the technology capability to achieve that? Yes, we do. I think the building blocks are already coming into place, not yet in India, but there are certain pilots happening in the US and in the UK. There are 2 pilots happening. And I think they're putting up a very good framework for doing cross-media measurement. That doesn't matter whether it's technically, it could be print, it could be radio, it could be TV, it could be digital in terms of your own domain, it could be social media as platforms, it could be gaming consoles, it could be reality, virtual or AR headsets, it doesn't matter, because that's what the framework's being built. But as I've been saying this for about a year now, is that I think what's required is collaboration, right? Because there is no single entity that can measure all these different channels across all of them. So there will be somebody who has an expertise and a presence in, let's say, television measurement like BARC. There's, of course, Comscore that does digital. We also do social. There's a new channel that's gaining a lot of topical interest, which is the CTV. So there's some agencies that do CTV also. We also do CTV. So I think the question is that for a true cross-media measurement program, there has to be collaboration. Which means that they will also introduce very strong governance, common methodology, because while everyone's been doing their own thing, we all have our own individual methodology. So there has to be a unification or a normalization of methodologies, which allows the advertisers in particular to see that, you know, the money that they're spending is actually delivering the outcomes. Well, that may be the ultimate holy grail, but initially at least is delivering a measurable, valid output, and finally delivering the outcomes that they're looking for.
Avinash, I would like to bring you in here now. Is what Geet is saying is the technology piece is the easiest, and it is then the intent. And so given that, you know, that's been identified, and also that we need to have collaboration between all the stakeholders, and especially the news broadcasters themselves, and you head the NBDA, which also introduced digital. I mean, earlier it was the MBA, and then said you recognized digital as that, you know, next frontier for growth. I want your views on the challenges with integrated measurement, and what will it take for us to have this, or at least get started to go down this path to have integrated measurement?
So first of all, I must clarify that what I speak today here should not be considered as a view of the NBDA. May or may not be the NBDA view. Second one is that I'm surprised in this panel there is nobody sitting from the BARC, which is particularly, so far we have discussed that should be leading the integrated mechanism. I mean, with all due respect to Geet. So the problem in media measurement is not about technology, as Geet rightly mentioned, right? Technology exists. The stakeholder has to agree with those technology and methodology. I think there is a big gap here between the stakeholders. Viewpoint as to how it should be measured. I mean, just look at it. Facebook today says 2 seconds or 3 seconds is ad seen. YouTube says 30 seconds. TV is measured at 1 minute. How are you going to integrate the three? Second one is that already in our industry, okay, there are measurement which is available. One of them, Vikas is sitting here. He is already giving data through his Distro TV views as to how many people are watching. Chrome is giving the analytics of all the connected TV data. And also we have our own ways of finding out through our own app and systems as to what people are watching. The point is that all three are fragmented. Industry has to come together, and I don't think so industry is going to come together on this topic. And the reason is particularly the current measurement companies, they need to build trust amongst the stakeholder for us to allow them to do so.
I would come to the advertisers then. It's your money that's being spent, and so therefore, do you have trust and faith in the systems that exist, and how are you pulling up the measurement bodies that are there to kind of ensure that you are getting the right data from them and you're making sense? Sorry?
Define trust. So tell me something. Do you guys trust that 18 ratings which the World Cup final match got, was it really 18 or should have been more? We all believe that rating is a number which has been derived out of the number of people meters which are present in so many households, 55,000 households, roughly about 2.5 lakh individuals, right? It's coming out of that. So it's not that you can trust one part and can't trust another part. Okay, I think there's a lot of discomfort in, especially in news channels, because there is a flaw in some the way the measurement happens, which BARC has to address today, which rightly said by Avinash that somebody from BARC should have been here. So let them answer this question. As far as the trust in rating system is concerned, this system was devised because there was a mistrust in the earlier system, which is TAM system. And the TAM system came about because there was no trust in the diary system, and there was another system called InTAM. So the system today is evolution of several systems which existed in last 30 years. First, there was a diary system. People used to write down the ratings. People said that whatever is being written by people is not correct. Then the system came which was called InTAM system. After that InTAM system, that system of TAM came. There was a mistrust around TAM system also. So there is a system, there is a mistrust around BARC right now. So this mistrust has to be solved, right? Because this system of BARC was also effort of a joint body between ISA, which is Indian Society of Advertisers, the broadcasters, which have a major stake in that, and advertising agencies. All these three parties put together put up this system. Not, again, it's been about 8 years that this system is in existence. All these bodies need to sit together, understand from broadcasters, re-evaluate the panel and see what are the flaws, and then probably relook at the whole number system. So I think this mistrust should go away. This mistrust should not exist between the broadcasters and the rating system. That's my take.
Okay. Archana, you want to say something?
I'm just adding to, see, there's no perfect system, right? But at least there is something from a measurement standpoint where for advertisers to see where their money is going. As I said, and as Rajiv said that, there has been a mistrust of the earlier systems, and which is why this got devised. And this took, I remember it took at least 3 to 4 years before the system got set up. I don't believe there's ever going to be a perfect system. There's always going to be flaws. It's about addressing those flaws and trying to figure out how to make it better. And I think that's really critical. But coming to your point on terms of what are the advertisers doing, right? I think we then kind of devise a way of figuring out how to be measure, right? We look at, maybe ask our distribution and sales teams as to what they watch. If I look at digital, there are platforms like we've used DAR in the past to look at reach frequency curves, right? For different platforms to seeing, and we've seen that there are some platforms who give, they keep building reach, and there are some platforms after a point of time the reach stagnates and there's only frequency gets built, right? When we are then making our plans from an advertising standpoint, then we try to look at seeing what is the kind of budgets that we would put in each of these platforms, because if I have to, if reach is my criteria, then I will obviously take a lot more of those kind of platforms. However, I need to also balance it out of frequency, so maybe a little lesser money on some of them. But if frequency is the objective, so. And I think from while linear at least has some measurement, not completely and 100% there, but at least it has some measurement. Digital as such has no measurement. So, every client or every advertiser is trying to figure out in their own way, because as you rightly said, it's our budgets. We have to find the best way to reach the consumer in the most efficient and effective manner. And I think that's, individually, all of us are doing something on those lines.
Avinash, I want to bring you back. If we had to go beyond just measurement and then also talk about selling, integrated selling, if you began selling, or maybe you already are doing it, but if you saw greater success with integrated selling, would that also kind of put pressure on all the measurement to fall in place? So I want to take the conversation towards how are you selling media? Is a YouTube just an add-on? Are you finding buyers for just, say, YouTube Live? If ABP Live is only on YouTube, are they going for ad spots just there? Has that conversation begun? What is it like?
By the way, all of us and some of the broadcasters are sitting in the room, news broadcasters. We are all selling TV plus digital together right now. Okay? But more or less it is sold like in linear fashion. There is a team which separately sells the VODs and all the innovations. But look, there is a basic flaw in the system, okay, which unless we address that, it's not going to solve the problem. For over 2.5 decades, most media companies work day in, day out to build reach. So you had your own newspaper, you hired hawkers, put your newspapers at the center, it reached to the hotels, households, etc. We tied up with the cable operator delivered the signal. Even government made the laws of must carry. If you have a signal up in there, they must carry those signals. Now look at digital. Once your frequency is out, once you're streaming, you do not know who is watching because you don't own the distribution network or you have no say in that, right? So all of a sudden, entire ecosystem has changed. Now in that ecosystem, who is watching it, how they're watching is not determined by either Geet, while I trust his rating currency, or by anybody else. It is all given by the same agencies which is distributing your content. Google is saying so many people watched, Facebook is saying so many people saw. That's the basis my colleague on right and left are paying, right? Unless that is reformed, that there is a system which determines actually how many eyeballs have seen across different platforms, and for that, unless you build trust and media owners have a say in those distribution network, this problem is not going to get resolved, no matter how we talk. So right now, entire selling is happening. We are all selling connected TV, which we know that how many people are watching us on the connected TV, or through the YouTube. Now just to give you the example of the YouTube. YouTube approached all broadcasters to sell at X rate, you can sell our inventory. When you go in the market, ask them, they can buy from YouTube at a far lesser rate than that. Why the hell they will come to us? And that is why when they opened this policy about a year and a half back, hardly any sale has happened from any broadcast network. So there is a fundamental flaw in the system. As a broadcaster, we are selling our content, and what we have seen is that number of people actually watching TV just before COVID on news TV, if they have gone down in reach in BARC, more number of people have actually joined on the live TV on YouTube, connected devices, and on other forms of internet, right? So if you add the two, today each broadcaster's reach have gone sharply up. But the message that goes out in the market that people are watching less and less news, which is not true. Second one is that the proliferation which has happened on the connected devices, our entire technology effort and making content to suit to those audience is not giving us due result because the selling is not in the hand of the broadcasters. If you look at traditional media companies, two things they always controlled: what they made and what they sold. The second one has completely gone out of their hand.
Aditi, I want to bring you in, your views, because you are the via media between the buyer and the seller. So you are overhearing all of these conversations, trying to, get them to talk to each other. What are your thoughts?
So I'll remind you of one line that we heard a little earlier in the conversation, which was that brands are trying to reach consumers in the most efficient manner. Yeah, the word is efficiency. So I agree with what Avinash said, because what has happened is that there is very limited control in the distribution and the way content is consumed. So I may choose to watch 5 seconds and somebody else may watch 20 seconds, but there is no way that the person who's putting out the content can even know exactly what happened. That's what I think in a way technology has done to us. And as we speak, it's rapidly changing. So I think next year you're going to have this conversation in a very different way, because suddenly AI would have dramatically altered even this reality. Yeah. But that said, so what happens as far as, let's say, when we look at execution is the most efficient way becomes programmatic. Yeah, where no broadcaster has any control, and we were just having a conversation with some people earlier saying that programmatic is the most efficient way. So why should I, let's say as a partner to brands, talk to one broadcaster? I talk to that one broadcaster when there's a big thing that I want to do. There's an event, there is elections, there is something exciting happening which they will have great content to bring on board, and that's where I want a partnership. If it is just about reach, there are many ways today to reach the consumer. And I know it's a challenging conversation, because at the same time you want great content. But we don't have a way to bring perhaps these two ends together yet, is what I would say.
Geet, you seem to be dying to say something.
Yeah, I think I'm an optimist, apart from my comments on the technology part being easy. But I think what we are seeing getting built out right now is cross-media measurement frameworks, and very obviously, or may not be that obvious, it's all being pushed by the WFA, the World Federation of Advertisers, which is, people who spend the money, right? And what I'm happy to report is that has really made tremendous progress. I mean, there was a bit of slowdown because of COVID, but at least in the last 18 months, there's been a tremendous amount of progress in fleshing out the framework. What I can say that it's a very mature framework. It's got a lot of recommendations and suggestions to be implemented locally. There's also, it's code ready, right? So that means there are pieces of code or components of that program that are available. Now, does that mean it's going to be easy to implement it in a local context? No. That's where we need to come together as the local stakeholders and figure out what's going to be the actual implementation. There'll be elements around the commercials, the cost, there'll be around governance, around maybe some components of technology. But the good news is that people have thought about this. Frankly, I am a bit surprised that over the last 18 months that I've been in Comscore, leading APAC and being based in India, that I've had very few conversations around cross-media measurement. So I'm actually extremely happy that we have this panel here discussing measurement in general, but cross-media measurement in particular, because this is, it's ready to go. And I think it needs certain amount of associations or collaborations that can come together and make this happen. Now, remember one thing, that India is an extremely important country, obviously for us, we are Indians, but also from a global standpoint, the amount of interest there is on accurate, reliable data coming out of India is of interest to even the big platforms that we've talked about here. Right? I have conversations with my colleagues in the US or in the UK where they're asking about, how can we get some of that done. So the good news is the frameworks have been built. There are code components that are ready. I think what's waiting is for us to come together locally. Now, whether that's going to be led by BARC or it's going to be led by some other association, I can't comment on that. Well, whoever. I have no comments, but I can say that at least we are absolutely ready to participate in those collaborations. It's not like we want to do everything, but there are certain components that we, as Comscore, now speaking on behalf of Comscore, that we can do very well. And I want to work in the spirit of that collaboration, but it needs somebody to own that. Okay? Figure out who's going to spend the money, who's going to be the governance structures, so on and so forth.
Avinash, do you feel
Let me tell you,
confident?
this is finally going to get done by some technology company which is not owned by either Comscore or BARC. It's not going to happen through that because, as I said earlier, that the trust issue in how the things are getting measured with the panels. In today's world, when you can watch how many people are actually consuming it live, you go back to the panel home system, how many people are going to trust? That's exactly, Geet disagrees with me, but
I agree with you.
So you look at US, what has happened. Nielsen was thrown out. Last year, almost about 25% of the upfront sale went through the own currencies which are owned by the CBS and NBC.
He said that, I didn't say that. Okay. Just to be clear.
So the technology company will finally come and solve this problem. But the point right now here is that we are already seeing a messy system of measurement, and why the core of that, which not many people are ready to address, including in the marketing community, that in this kind of measurement science has been borrowed from America, where from the East Coast to West Coast, people have cereals in the breakfast and barbecue over the weekend, right? Here, on every 15, 20 kilometer, your food, language, everything changes. To bring that science and implement this in this kind of country, you need to have a very high size of panels, at least 500,000.
Avinash, sorry, I'm going to just jump in here. I think you're absolutely right. A panel-only approach cannot work. If you read the latest report that came out of the WFA on the HALO project, the first paragraph says that panel only is inadequate, right? But it also says census only is inadequate. So what we need is actually a marriage of the two to be able to provide that, plus more complexities. So I think that's very clear. And like I said earlier, that what I like about this framework, and I've read through some of this documentation, I'm not an expert, is that it's mature. It is not US-centric. It is not. And I would encourage anybody who's interested in this measurement debate, is really, really mature. And they're looking at, look, the volumes are here in this part of the world, the billions of and hundreds of millions of population. I think they're taking cognizance of that and they're building frameworks which allow for a mobile-first market. Right? We are obviously, India is a big topic of conversation in many of these discussions that I'm a part of.
So I'm sure we will see some signals from there being taken up here. We have just about 2 minutes. Does anybody have any questions for the panelists here? No? No? So, Vivek has a question.
So anybody in the panel can take this. I think there is an agreement that we need a cross-media measurement currency, and the fact that we're tossing between BARC and tossing between let's say Comscore or whatever. So just a question: why don't 6 of you get together and get this currency on? five of you, I think 5 of you, there are people who are willing to
Vivek,
back
what a
this.
brilliant advice, like the IBF board met several times and agreed on everything,
No, so I'm
Certainly
saying
we will.
IBF is not the end of the world. There is IMAI, there are other bodies who are far more positive and not panel based. Maybe they are open to experiment with panel and universe data. And maybe it could be a Comscore plus plus. But it will need all of you to come together and say, okay, yes, this is what we need. This never happens. I think I want to use this opportunity to at least get 5 of you together to say, okay, fine, we are on it.
Definitely answer. So conceptually, absolutely great. And I don't think conceptually anybody has any disagreement. I think conceptually everybody agrees. That's why we are all talking about this. The problem is in the reality of the execution. I think there are 3-4 elements which are very important. One is the cost itself. So frameworks are great. But when we transport frameworks from other countries to our country, because of the sheer complexity, and that's why the measurement is such a challenge, we just haven't managed to be able to scaling it up. So, like we discussed, BARC has come over a journey of times. It is a larger panel, but it is just not large enough. And that's going to be one of the biggest stumbling blocks I see in terms of everybody on this table coming together. Because we may agree, but is the measurement going to be large and robust enough for everybody to buy into? I think that's going to be the first big problem. Then we will come into the mechanics of the data collection. I mean, am I representing a news broadcaster and a YouTube equally? That's going to be a question. So so those are other elements, but I think the first thing is going to be solving for the complexity that is India.
Thank you, Aditi. Sorry, time's up. Thank you, Vivek, for that question. And thank you, panelists. I think what's come out clearly is that we need collaboration across stakeholders. Last year when Mr. Shashi Sinha was here, he said the same thing. I hope that when we have a similar conversation a year from now, things are different. Thank you so much for your time today.